welcome to this presentation. My name is Asher and I'm doing a presentation on rocket engineering. My main inquiry question is, how do the first rockets in the US compare to the newest models of rockets? Well, if you know a lot about rockets, then you would know that there are a lot of differences from the first rocket to the newest rocket. One thing is, the first rockets that we made were only to launch missiles and satellites. They couldn't carry people yet. First of all, what are rocket engineers? Rocket engineers are people who mainly design and help build rockets. They don't just do that. They also have to calculate things like the cost and flight path of rockets. The main way that rocket engineers improve rockets is with something called the rocket equation. The rocket equation's three elements are mass, thrust, and efficiency. How long has USA been using rockets for satellites? USA has been using rockets for satellites since 1958. The first human in space was 1961. The first rockets ever made in the world were from the Chinese in 1232, who were firing gunpowder tubes into the air with the gases that were being released. What are the main parts of a rocket? The main parts of a rocket are the engines, the command module, and the fuel tanks. The engines have to be lightweight but strong. The reason they have to be lightweight is because they need to be easier to launch. The command module is the space on the top of the rocket where the astronauts go. There's all sorts of computers in there. It's also the astronauts can be safe and the rocket doesn't fail. The command module of the Falcon 9 rocket can eject with sensors that detect any possible threat. Our Falcon 9 rocket was built to get 2 people to the International Space Station. How do you build a rocket? Well, a rocket normally comes in 3 stages. Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 3. Stage 1 pushes the rocket off of the launch pad and into space. Stage 2 pushes the rocket into orbit and increases the velocity of the rocket. Stage 3 carries the astronauts and the commander lunar module. How are the first rockets built? The first rockets were only built to put satellites into orbit and to launch missiles. They couldn't carry people yet. One main difference between our newest rockets and our first rockets was the fuel type. Early rockets used solid fuel, and modern rockets use liquid fuel. USA first tested liquid fuel on March 16, 1926. The first rocket ever built to put a satellite into orbit was a Russian rocket with a satellite called Sputnik 1. Sputnik 1 was the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth ever. But USA launched the first animals to space. USA's first successful rocket was the Jupiter C rocket, made to put a satellite into orbit in 1958. The Apollo program came soon after in 1961. The Apollo mission's objective was to get people to the moon. Eventually, on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon because of rocket engineers in the Apollo missions. If rocket engineers hadn't added the necessary additions to rockets, the American flag wouldn't be on the moon right now. How are the newest rockets built? The newest rockets are built with better parts like the command module and the engine. One of the newest rockets that USA built was called the Falcon 9. It was built by SpaceX to get people to the International Space Station. The cost of our Falcon 9 rocket was $90 million. That's a lot of money. The first rockets that USA built was only to put satellites into orbit. We couldn't put people into space yet. The smallest and one of the first successful rockets to launch a satellite into orbit was a rocket called the SS-520 rocket. It cost $4,400,000. What have been some rocket failures? USA's first attempt to put a satellite into orbit was a failure. This rocket was called the Vanguard TV-3. Only a few seconds after launching, the rocket lost thrust and fell back down to the Earth, causing it to explode. The cause of this explosion was a fuel malfunction. NASA modified this and it didn't happen again. The rocket only got a few feet high before losing thrust. Another accident is the Challenger space shuttle. About 73 seconds after launch, the Challenger space shuttle caught fire and disintegrated, killing all 7 crew members. NASA learned from this accident. The cause of the explosion was a fuel malfunction. The cause of this explosion was 2 gases from the fuel tank mixing and exploding, ripping the rocket apart. The last rocket accident that I'll be talking about today was called the GOES-G rocket. About 70 seconds after this launch, it got hit by lightning and the rocket's first stage engine shut down. NASA had to destroy the falling rocket to avoid it exploding on the ground at impact. NASA learned to put better protection on our rockets. What is NASA? NASA is a government agency that used to build rockets but now mostly helps launch rockets. NASA was founded in 1958. This means that NASA has been around for over 50 years. What is SpaceX? SpaceX is a private company owned by Elon Musk that builds rockets. It was founded on May 6, 2002. Well, that wraps up my presentation. I hope you learned something new about rockets and rocket engineers, and thank you for watching.